Boy, oh boy, it just gets fun, don't it? Yep, looks fun. Huh. It's supposed to be like that? I'm supposed to be able to move this around? Huh. Well, shoot. Always something. Huh. Are these supposed to be bushings? Yeah, look like somebody took a torch to them or something. Oh, dang, that's a little better. Huh. Suicide adapter. That suicide steering there. They used to be in there, but I took them out. And those used to be bushings. And there's our control arm. Alright, so this is what we got. And I got the control arm off. Coil spring is off. And if you're wondering, it is 10 coils. In case you don't know. I thought the spring was broken. Let's stand it up so you can actually see. I thought the spring was actually broken here. There we go. Thought it was broken, but I don't know what in the world's going on with it, honestly. I don't think it's actually anything really wrong with the spring. I think it's, a lot of it is that. So when I got this thing separated, got our drum, the whole assembly off, spindle, all that good stuff. Had a little bit of fun with this thing and took to see how much play it had. And you could literally just about, well, that's a little exaggerating, but I mean, you get the point there. You could pretty much do that. That's why this car is unsafe. For now. But anyway, I lost a bushing there. Might need that. But anyway, it had little pieces in the spring. I don't know if it's a piece of aluminum or what. That went in there like that. I had like 2 of them. Not sure where the other one went. Not going to reinstall them. I think it's supposed to stiffen the spring up. Actually still has the original factory paint still on it. It's pretty cool. But yeah, the way you count the coils on a spring, the right way to do it is you always start at the bottom. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So it's a 10 coil spring, if that makes sense. I had this little insulator. I guess that's pretty much just probably to keep it from being steel on steel contact up inside the frame there. That would be up in there. You always want to inspect all this stuff too. So the coil spring goes up in here, and you always want to inspect all that. Make sure it's, no cracks or, any rust issues or anything structural, because if it is, you're in a heap of trouble. But everything's good. It's just really greasy and dirty. And, you gotta make sure everything looks really good in here. It's nothing worn funny or any of that good stuff. But come to find out, we have Aftermarket lower ball joints. This is Aftermarket. 100% for sure, because it's got the bolts in it. Does not have rivets. Passenger side has a new ball joint as well. I say new, Aftermarket, and they are different. And something interesting about these ball joints here. See if it'll do it. Well, hold that thought. That's what I was trying to do. They come apart just like that. That's just the way they're made. So the bolts is what holds it together, just like so. And this comes off just like that. anyway, don't like that design. Hopefully that's improved over the years. But anyway, it's wore out. I need a little bit wider pickle fork. I couldn't quite get my pickle fork around this to separate it. And they make different size pickle forks. I just need one that has a little bit wider end, because mine's a little too small and it couldn't quite go around it there. But I was able to separate it. Don't ever beat on the spindle and go bam, bam, bam like that to separate it. Don't do that. These spindles are extremely hard to get, even if it's not an Edsel. And just don't do that. I don't like that idea, because to me, you know, it's a cast iron spindle. And to me, why would you want to risk cracking it or, you know, damaging it in any way? They make the proper tool. Use the proper tool. But anyway, took our boot off. This is our boot. This is our stop, boot, whatever you want to call it. Sits right in here, like this. Took it off, just 9/16. I'm gonna clean it up. We're gonna reuse it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's still good, pliable. Nothing wrong with it there. We'll reuse that. I'll of course clean it up, but probably something oddball. This is an oddball car. But anyway, I am going to replace these springs no matter what, and they do make them from what I can tell. I'll make sure everything matches up, and there are several ways of measuring it. So you count the coils, so 1 all the way up to 10 coils. You want to measure the diameter of it from this end to this end. Make sure it's in the center. You're measuring it correctly there. You want to measure the diameter of it and the inner diameter as well, and the actual thickness of it. So you get all 3 diameters there, and then you could probably get custom coil springs made, I'm sure. But they do make coil springs for this car, luckily, which I'm sure they're the same as a Fairlane or a Galaxy. But this does not have the later 63 to 64 swivel, I guess you would call suspension. These just have the straight bolts. If you're a 4 guy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. See, these are straight. It's not like a swivel there where it's supposed to help with the caster and the camber or something like that. It's supposed to correct it more, like for riding, like on the highway and all that. It makes the control arm, you know, can go like that. It gives it more of a pivot point there, and then it's more of a caster or something like that. But these do not have that, thank God. But they make a kit for all that. But that's a little later. That's a little too new. This is 59 here. But that's like a 63, 64 Galaxy kind of thing. We just got regular old bolts. All you gotta do is take a 9/16, excuse me. See, I'm not perfect. Take a 5/8 wrench and take these 2 bolts out here. And you gotta take and push these. Once you take them out, these ends just press right on out through the frame. And when I say press out, you can just take your finger and just push them out. I'll even show you an example here. So we'll take our bolt out here. And you always want to make sure and keep everything lined up no matter what. Keep everything lined up so it matches when you put everything back together. Now we're going to reuse all this. There's nothing wrong with this at all. So you pull that off. You always want to inspect that too. Make sure there's no grooves or nothing funny worn on it. And you got one little groove right there. So we'll probably end up replacing that, because the bushing goes on the outside diameter of that, and you don't want it to ride funny. So anyway, you take it off, and then you just take this, that presses out like that, pull it out, and get it out. Sorry, I'm shaking the camera there. It comes out just like that. Sometimes you might have to take a wrench, put it on the end or a socket, and hold that so it doesn't spin. But simple as that. Put it back in. You just line it up with the hole. You can do this one-handed here. So you line it up with the hole in the back there, and then you just push it on through, just like that. That goes like that. This is not a washer. It's spot welded to the frame. Cannot remove that. Just so you know. You take your shim or whatever you want to call it. That goes on the outside here. That slips on like that. And then you got your bolt. But when you take your control arm off, just mark everything. And you really only have to do just one side. You could leave one side together. You got to take the bolt off, obviously, but to slide the control arm off. But you could leave this side probably pretty much together. You have to take that outer shim off and just push this up just a little bit like that. And then push this one back a little bit. And then that way it will allow you to take the control arm off. It's a little funky how you have to take it off, but it's not bad. But anyway, camera work's kind of shaky there. Apologize for that. But there's all our new drag link and tie rods and all that good stuff. We finally got our correct tie rod in, so that makes it nice. But this does have a sway bar on it on the front, and I will be replacing those bushings as well. But that could be done later on. That really doesn't matter. But those were completely shot too. And what did I do with that? What did I do with it? What did I do with it? I got it around here somewhere. But anyway, the bushings were completely shot. No, that's not it. Don't know what I did with it. Oh. Got it in the car here. So this is all that's left of our sway bar end link here. That's it. No bushings in there. I got a little bit of a bushing, but that's it. She's shot, fellas and ladies, if you're watching. Shock's still good. Replaced them not that long ago. We're going to reuse them. Nothing wrong with them. I checked them. Still good. Yeah, I'll say check them as really only this side, but we're going to do one side at a time, take our time on this, and go from there. But yeah, this thing's completely apart. I cannot send it out like that. It's completely unsafe. I mean, that control arm had so much side and play like that, just all over the place. I don't know how this car even drove, honestly. I really don't. And it was so wore out that this upper ball joint right here, the edge of it here, was just about rubbing the inside of my tire. You can kind of see just a little bit where it's starting to rub. It's just, this whole suspension's completely shot. Now, if you're wondering about this upper control arm here, I've checked that. This doesn't really have bushings. I call them bushings, but they're really not. They're really just a grease seal. So we lift it up here, and this is the original ball joint because it's still got the rivets in it. If you look there. Come on, focus there. But it's got 3 rivets. So that's still original, and this one's still tight. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. I gotta take a lot of effort to kind of move that around. So it still pivots, which is good. It's nice and smooth. So that's good. And this camera work is absolutely awful. But this ball joint's actually still good. But we're replacing it anyway because, you know, this is a 59 and, you know, we're going to replace it. They're not going to halfway do something. Anyway, so to check your control arms here, what you want to do is just, you know, move them up, down, make sure they're nice and smooth. It's got good travel all the way up. And, of course, they don't go all the way up. Something wrong if they got to go that far up. Your suspension does never travel up that high. But make sure, you know, they go all the way up, all the way down. And I'm kind of surprised it doesn't have a bump stop on here, like a little rubber bump stop. But it sure doesn't. And there's no spot for it, no holes or anything. And that's the way it came from the factory, believe it or not. But you just want to check it. Make sure it goes up and down nice and smooth. Ours does. And then you want to make sure and move that thing back and forth to make sure it's no side play. Like I said, the lower one that I had on here had so much slop in it, it wasn't funny. But what you want to do as you're moving it up and down is try and wiggle it, you know, back and forth. And ours, you know, is nice and smooth. It's no side play. at all. I mean, I cannot move it. And the bushings that they're really talking about are just a grease seal. That's it. Let's get a light on that. Yep, won't do it. Anyway, it's just 2 little grease seals. That's it. That's all they are. There's one right there. There's another one right there, covered in grease, but they're good. And you can actually take and spin these all the way around if you want it. It's just a grease seal. It's not going to hurt nothing. You can spin that grease seal around like it. See, it's not torn or anything like that. It's still good. And this might sound crazy, but I find a lot of times that this original style rubber, you know, for example, this bump stop here, you know, it's covered in grease and oil and everything else. I found out that this original rubber is actually better than the junk they make today. Seems like a good example is fuel line, the rubber fuel line. Dry rots quick. A lot of that's to do with the ethanol in the fuel, I think. They do say they're for ethanol fuels compatible, but you know how that goes. But anyway, you know, we're not going to mess with them at all. We're going to just leave them alone. And like I said, it's no side play or any of that. We're not going to disturb it. Now, if it was, you got 2 bolts on this control arm. Right there and right there. If y'all can see them right in the center of the screen there. And what you want to do is unbolt those, and you got shims that are back in there on each side. And you got to keep them in order, separate from the front there and the rear. And what you want to do is take a micrometer, measure them, the thickness, get them nice and cleaned up, measure the thickness of them, and write it down on a piece of paper so you know exactly how thick it was on each one. That's what sets your camber, I believe. Caster is your wheel back and forth. Camber is in and out, kind of like this. Like if you're looking inside the car, just like this, that's your camber, adjusting it in and out like that. And toe is basically in and out like that. If that makes sense. But anyway, but yeah, you want to take a micrometer. That's the best way to do it. Measure them. That way you get it exactly back where it was. And you can actually look in the factory assembly manual. It'll tell you. And that'll get you in the very close ballpark, and that'll make it, you know, safe enough to drive to the alignment shop. I would always take to the alignment shop no matter what. I don't play around with that because you don't want it to drive all funky, and plus you'll wear tires out, and you know, you want it to be safe. But anyway, this is what we got here, and I will be working on this control arm, and you've got to inspect these thoroughly. And this has nothing to do, you know, with it being an Edsel or anything, but since my C10 here, I actually had the control arm split straight down, and the control arm shaft, because it had a little shaft that goes through, pretty much came completely through. And if I would have been going down the road, that would have been a major accident. But that's, you know, that's what happened last year. That's been corrected, and ended up the original control arms were actually thicker on this truck than the junk China ones. So that's probably why they lasted so long. But they were actually replacements, and it literally broke at the bottom here and split, and the whole control arm went just like this on one side. But you want to inspect the inside of these very thoroughly all around. Make sure there's no splits, no cracks or anything like that. Flip it over, check the inside as well. You gotta check this stuff out, you know, thoroughly. This is your suspension, folks. You don't want to play around with that. You want to inspect all this too. Of course, it's covered in grease. Make sure it's, you know, nothing cracked, nothing split there. You know, you don't want to have a spring that's done busted through here or something like that. Same way with up in here. Inspect all this thoroughly, very thoroughly. Make sure and look at the control arm. Make sure it doesn't look, you know, bent like that, you know, where somebody's done come in there and, you know, it's done hit something and bent it all up. Or, you know, you got to make sure this thing it's true, you know, make sure it's not bent up anywhere at all. And like I said, you got to come in here and make sure that spring, the bottom of that spring sits in here just like this. So you got a coil on the bottom, and it's got a step on there, and it lines up just like it. That's how it sits in there. So that way it keeps it sitting in the same position. It will not rotate at all once it's installed in the car. And a lot of times, sometimes on the upper frame too, it's got the same kind of little step down in there like it. But you got to make sure and line it up when you assemble all this back. That's very important. But yeah, you got to inspect this thing very thoroughly, really good. Make sure none of this has been up. And see, I don't like how thin this is, but that's the way it came from the factory. But it's just the way it is. But hopefully, I hope this video turns out kind of decent here. But anyway, that's what we got here. So I'm gonna get new ball joints, new lower bushings, get all that good stuff coming. I'm gonna clean this up thoroughly, and really inspect it and look over it really good. And I think it'll be perfectly fine. I don't see anything really obviously wrong with it. And we'll throw a couple coats of paint on it, get our new coil springs, and we'll clean our spindles up and throw all this back together. We'll have to bleed the brakes again, but that's okay, ain't a big deal. And hopefully we'll be able to take this car to a car show here soon and not have to worry, because between the front suspension on this car and getting the fuel tank and the center unit and all that correct, and there'll be some upcoming videos on that, it's kind of not very fun not be able to drive it. It's not a show car, but you know, I miss driving this car. This is a fun car and I like it, and you know, I love it because it's a 2-door hardtop. And one day it will be a frame off restoration. This will be the only vehicle that I will do a frame off restoration on, just because what it is. And let me rephrase that, it really won't be a restoration, it'll be a resto mod, because this car will not be 100% original, but that's okay. But I save everything that comes off this car that's original, so if I want to put it back original, I can do it. But it will not be 100% original. The exterior and the interior will be, but a lot of stuff, like all this junk, you can get rid of. But anyway, that's what we got. And I will see y'all in some upcoming videos, and we'll get our ball joints, get our lower bushings, our coil springs, make sure all they match up, count all our coils, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10, and that'll be it. See y'all later. This is why this car is not being driven, because it is, as of now, it is unsafe. But we're going to fix that. We're going to make this car fun to drive again. Thanks for watching. Would you drive it like that? You got to ask yourself that. Would you drive it like that? Think about that.